Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of CEO and Market Expert Interviews. I'm your host, Lucian. Most of you know me as Triangle Investor from social medias. I'm joined today by Colin Healey, CEO for Premier American Uranium. As always, Colin, it is great to see you. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Lucian. It's great to be here.
Thanks. Let's cover some uranium big picture topics before we cover company developments. 2024 is behind us, another great year for the nuclear sector, especially on the AI front. However, equities and spot market not as expected, to put it mildly. Give us your perspective on the performance of equities and spot, and how do you see them in 2025?
Sure. The equities really had a lot of momentum coming into 2024. The uranium price was moving through $83, I think, at the beginning of the year, peaked out at 107. And for sure, there was a lot of movement in the equities that people rightfully started to take profit on once we saw that there was going to be kind of a retracement in uranium price, and that continued throughout the year. And I think that's just a nuance of uranium spot itself and how it trades. And I think that of course, when the uranium price has a big retracement, you're going to see that in the equities as well, especially kind of down in the explorer and developer groups, double digit negative returns in 2024 is kind of what you would expect when you have the commodity, the spot price moving from 107 to 70, 72, 3, wherever it landed. But I do think that as we enter 2025 here, we're starting to see some stabilization around that $70 and low 70s number. And I think that we're starting to, save for today's movement, we're starting to see some support back in the equities, and I think that's kind of step one. I think that even though for those of us who kind of run uranium companies and have been around the space a long, long time, we're much more focused on that long-term price, especially the picture it gives about the fundamentals and how things are really moving, and kind of real price discovery. But the spot price is always going to be relevant to short-term investors and speculators. And I think that what we were seeing in the first few weeks of the year was a stabilization of the spot price. Risk capital starting to work its way back in, which is pushing the uranium stocks up, low single-digit returns up until, again, kind of what we're seeing today. But outside of that, I think that we're kind of putting in the lows for spot price, and we're going to see it start to rebuild throughout the year. How that happens really depends on several market dynamics. There's a whole bunch of things that could start to move the spot price up, and whether that's 6 months or 9 months into the year, it's really difficult to call. But fundamentally, I love where we are in the space, and I think that those of us increasing our equity exposure right now are going to be rewarded. And the timing is always difficult to call, and I think patience is going to be really key.
Yeah, agreed. We are recording this on January 27th, and today we had the news from Kazatomprom where their Inkai joint venture with Cameco has resolved the approval issue and resumed mining operations. Do you believe how will that impact in the short term the market?
Well, I mean, I think there's probably some who thought that the initial announcement of that was a indicative of the risk, and probably is indicative of the potential risk of in a jurisdiction that produces more uranium than any other. That said, when something like that gets rectified, it's a bit of confirmation that they are going to be, in the picture, producing reliably, supplying, and so on. So I'm not surprised to see, that coupled with some of the other things going on in the market today. I'm not surprised to see a bit of a retracement in uranium stocks. But to me, I never felt that JV Inkai would be offline permanently or just disrupted a long time.
Yeah.
Certainly for my thesis and analysis of supply demand, in the uranium market. In less supply is also should be bullish for price, but we've been undersupplied for 7 or 8 years. Uranium production's been 70 to 75% of demand for an extended period of time. And sure, there was inventory built up post Fukushima, no question. A lot of that's been absorbed, and that's how we got price rationalization leading into last year. But we continue to be undersupplied, and I just think that this is what you're seeing, how you're seeing the equities respond today is really short-sighted, and it's the financial markets are what they are, and they respond to news. And I don't want to give investment advice, but when I'm extremely bullish about a thesis and I see something trading at a discount to yesterday, I continue to be bullish.
Couldn't agree more on those words. Colin, let's touch on the work done by Premier in 2024. Give us an overview of the accomplishments. And the main question is, are all goals and targets achieved in 2024? I know that you become a CEO in, I believe, March of 2024, but nevertheless, cover the whole 2024.
Yeah, that's right. So when I got when I was added as CEO in March, the company had just negotiated the terms for acquisition of American Future Fuel, which added our Cebieta project in New Mexico. And that process, we completed that acquisition in June of last year. And through that process, we were able to really leapfrog some of the goals that we had when we first contemplated that acquisition. We were able to get a current resource of 23.5 million pounds, 18.6 million indicated on that Cebieta project in New Mexico in June, just ahead of closing that transaction. And that was something that we thought that we would not accomplish probably until at least the end of 2024. And because of that, we were able to we'll save some money drilling because there was confirmation drilling that we had anticipated would need doing. And we had applied for a permit also back in March to carry out some of that drilling. And we just received that permit. We have a press release out a week and a half ago regarding that Part 3 permit in New Mexico that allows us to go do some drilling. But through that process, we really accelerated that project. And that really started off a process where we're going to be able to kind of move that thing to preliminary economics by the middle of this year. That's our new target. That's something that we previously, during the acquisition process, we probably envisioned for the end of 2025, maybe early 2026. So, it's really, really important to me, and I'm very happy and proud of our team for accelerating that to where we are today. And it's going to save us a substantial amount of money, I think, because, that Part 3 permit that we applied for back in March prior to acquisition, the purpose of that was to do confirmation drilling to get a resource. Well, we got a resource. Now we have this permit. There's some drilling that we can do under that permit that's going to support some of the work towards a PEA. And with that PEA by mid-year, we will have a mineral resource update on that project as well. And we said when we produced that resource back in June of 2024 that we didn't include the Willie P area, for example. This is an area right in the heart of the Cebieta project that some of the data hadn't been digitized and wasn't available for modeling. So a desktop exercise has allowed us to move that into a manipulatable format. So we'll probably, we'll be able to include that in our analysis of for an updated resource. I can't say,
Sure.
What it could contribute, but I expect it to contribute. So with a resource update by the middle of this year, followed by PEA, I think that Cebieta is really going to dominate our news flow in the first half of the year. And those are some big milestones. I mean, we're doing everything with that project that you can possibly do for the stage that it's at. And we're doing it faster than I hoped. So quite happy with that. And also in 2024, we went and did the inaugural drilling at our Cyclone project in Wyoming. It's an ISR project. We have two targets there. There's Cyclone Rim and Osborne Draw. So we drilled 41 holes there, starting in July to kind of October of 2024. 36 of those were at the Cyclone Rim target. We were successful in establishing a half-mile trend that included intercepts above above the cutoff grade and above the GT cutoff of resources within other companies within the region. So that was quite bullish. We got a lot to go back to the Cyclone Rim target this year to follow up on. We were also quite efficient drilling there, so we were able to get over to our Osborne Draw target, which we were really planning to drill in 2025. But we did put 5 holes into Osborne Draw towards the end of the program, and for the 5 holes intersected uranium mineralization. I think our best intercept there was 23.5 feet at 0.021%. So you're approaching it's above the resource cutoff grade, but good thick intercept, and the GT there was 0.51, I think, if I recall. So two of those holes are for the 4 holes that hit. 2 of them are on each side fairly close together, but between them there's over a mile of space. So really indicating, I'm very excited to go start drilling there again in July of this year and follow up on those results, because 4 of the 5 holes hitting mineralization, seeing some good thickness, some promising grades. It's going to be a great 2025 from that perspective.
Yeah, so the main focus in 2025 will be the Cebiera project in New Mexico. Did I
I
get it?
think it's definitely the focus of the first half, right? So we've got this permit right now. We're figuring out, because that permit, when we applied for it, was specifically targeting resource confirmation drilling, and we accomplished the goal of that resource early. We're looking at potentially amending that permit to do some of the work that we would like to do in 2025 between now and midsummer, when we're going to update the resource and we're going to put out preliminary economics on Cebiera. So first half of the year, very Cebiera, New Mexico focused, potential for some exploration work, the resource update, and then hopefully, I'm saying midsummer right now, and I'm waiting for a little bit more confirmation on a date. But sometime in midsummer we'll have that PEA, and then kind of right at the same time we'll be transitioning to drilling in Wyoming, where we will drill from July to October. So it should be kind of a steady news flow, working 2 projects, with Wyoming being the focus of the second half of the year.
Okay, how big drilling program do you expect to have in Wyoming on Cyclone?
Right now, under the permit that we have, because we did some of the drilling on the Osborne Draw target last year, we only have about 25 holes, but those 25 holes could be substantial. Like it's a good drill program. It's enough holes for us to get a feel about how we're going to attack that thing moving forward, and it's about the same size program in concept as we had on the Cyclone Rim target last year, which
It's an infill program, right? Infill drilling.
no, it's exploration at Cyclone.
Oh, okay.
So we're going out to the first 4 holes that we put in place, 4 of the 5 anyway, intersecting some uranium mineralization. We're going to be putting in holes kind of in between those 2 areas and other targeted areas. It's really an inaugural, the continuation of our inaugural program at Osborne. So it should generate some new interesting information and data for us.
Sounds great. What about Colorado, Monogram Mesa and Atkinson Mesa? What's the plan for 2025 there?
So yeah, we continue to look at those projects. All of our work programs and budget is going to be dedicated to New Mexico and Wyoming. Those projects we continue to hold and evaluate. We may put together a strategy. We're working on acquiring historic production information about those projects to really have a focused strategy on them. But my strategy right now, my opinion right now, is that the best way to unlock the value of the assets we have is to focus on New Mexico, where we have a new resource and we can put together preliminary economics, and focus on Wyoming, where we have an exploration target of 7 to 12.5 million pounds in our 2023 43-101 tech report. And we've gone drilling there, and we've started to hit intercepts that are above resource cutoff grades for nearby projects. So I really think, one of the things that happened in 2024 with respect to our Wyoming project, we've got an operating producer about 12 to 15 miles to the east of us, and now the Sweetwater plant, which is also about 12 to 15 miles to the southeast of us, was purchased by a company whose plan is to refurbish that facility to become ISR capable processing facility. So now, that project becomes very strategic from my perspective now that we have two licensed facilities, and both with a plan to be able to process ISR loaded resins in the future. So, I mean, I really see that project as strategic and interesting, and potentially a great source of value for the shareholders. So that's where we're focusing, Wyoming and New Mexico.
Yeah, there is definitely a rush around Wyoming assets, Wyoming uranium. So definitely a great place to be. Agreed. And when it comes to the M&A front, any news on M&A?
Yeah, as you know, it's a big priority for us,
I know,
and we are the pipeline. It's very hard to talk about M&A with
of
it
course.
with any certainty, and for sure, discussions take a while. It's a process, but we've identified a pipeline of projects that we prioritize, and we're working on advancing discussions for certain assets, and because it's a big priority for us, and one of our main strategic pillars. It's something that I hope to be able to deliver news on in the first half of the year, at least. The timing is difficult to call, but for sure, it can happen really, really quickly once it starts to happen. But it's hard to give guidance on. It really depends. It depends a little bit on the market. It depends on the targets. So we're working on being extremely diligent stewards of capital and not overpaying for things. We want to acquire things, but we want to have a strategy to expose a lot of the value, or have some complementary or synergistic argument for acquiring the project. So it takes finesse to do well, and we have deep resources. A lot of our advisors, our board has a lot of experience on the M&A side. So I think that we're in good hands, and pretty well equipped to go out and do some.
Yeah, usually the company has to have some cash on the side when they are doing M&A. How is your cash position at the moment?
Our year-end cash is going to be, we haven't published our year-end, so the last cash that we saw is the last one published. But the work programs that we have planned for New Mexico and Wyoming are already part of the existing cash budget. Just over 4 million Canadian in cash at the end of the year.
Mhm.
So we'll start to we have the funding for the work programs that we have. If we do get involved in some M&A transaction, or transactions early in the year, I mean that could, if we acquire things that require investment to unlock value, then we'll look at funding around those kinds of transactions. But for the assets that we have, for the work that we want to do, we're in good shape.
Yeah, I mean, even if you will have to raise money, so far you didn't have any troubles in raising money. You have a strong backup when it comes to the big players supporting your company. So you don't expect any problems if you will raise money again this year.
I mean, it's always I don't take anything for granted ever.
Of course.
We're extremely lucky to have some big shareholders, Sachem Cove, obviously the co-founders Mike Alkin and Tim Rotolo, have been great supporters. Tim Rotolo continues to be the chairman of our board. They own 31% of the stock. ICE owns 9%. They've been supportive in our last financing. Mega Uranium,
Yeah.
also supportive in our last financing. So we're extremely blessed to have some strong shareholders who are supportive, who understand what we're trying to do, and I think that puts us in a great position. I think that shareholders that invest in Premier American Uranium are investing alongside some of the most sophisticated uranium investors that exist, and I think that provides some confidence, and that that we're going to do everything that we can to minimize dilution and spend money in ways that create value.
Fair enough. Final question, Colin. You mentioned already some of the possible news flow coming, but how will the news flow look like in the next, let's say, 6, 8 months from the
Yeah, so
project side? Let's put it that way.
right. So we're the first half of the year, as I mentioned, is going to be New Mexico Sabieta based. We have kind of seasonal limitations on when we can drill in Wyoming. So the reason we're starting in July in Wyoming is because that's when our drilling window opens up. And the reason we stopped drilling in Wyoming in October is because usually that's a good estimate of when the ground becomes difficult to access due to weather. So the first 6 months of the year, it's going to be um, in due course here in the next couple of weeks. We're going to probably have a press release out talking about what we're going to do under this Part 3 permit that we've just been granted. It is a bit of a dynamic thing because, as I said, that permit was really geared towards confirmation drilling that we no longer need to do. We're going to save substantial money because we don't need to do it, but we also need to look at how we can amend that permit. And then once we've done that, we'll probably do some exploration work that's going to generate news flow in the first half of the year from New Mexico. And then we're going to sometime in the early summer, the resource update in New Mexico, followed by a PEA, and that will probably take us into July. We're still saying midsummer because it's difficult to predict with certainty how quickly you can get through some of these technical studies. There's a lot of work that go into them. And so, I think midsummer is good guidance. But ideally, I'd like to have that done just before we start drilling in Wyoming and start to produce drill results from Wyoming. That I think our 2024 drilling at Osborne Draw target there showed, with four to the 5 holes mineralized, that we're going to go and we're going to be able to find uranium. So I'm looking forward to delivering news kind of from New Mexico in the first half of the year, and then starting in July to October, basically taking us into Q4 from Wyoming. So should be newsy. And if we can get some of our M&A initiatives announced in that time frame, I think it's pretty compelling.
I look forward to both to see the M&A and the news from the projects. That was Colin Healey, CEO for Premier American Uranium. Colin, thank you for coming to my show. Great chat as always. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.